Hi, and welcome to lecture number 9. We're going to talk about dealing with big business, fighting business, and all the atrocities of the Gilded Age. Some of the laws that were enacted and some of the new organizations that were created in order to fight big business. This is going to be a two-part lecture. So part one today focus mostly on some laws that are created, and I'll give you a little insight on an event that happened that really led the charge to creating better working conditions for laborers. So first today we're going to talk about the kind of the idea of the government, and then some of the steps that were taken towards ending the abuses of the poor in our country. So uh, in the past, during the Gilded Age, we had kind of the idea of laissez-faire economics, and laissez-faire is a French term meaning hands-off. So we basically believe that the government should not be involved in business and in the way that our country works through business, and we need to allow it to work itself out. If the government gets involved and starts regulating things, then it's going to limit the profits of business, and that's not good for society because if business isn't making profits, then we're not bringing in money, and we need to continue that. We need to continue making money in order to have a prosperous society. Um, as we see all these injustices, we understand that we need to start regulating government or regulating business in some way. So the first thing we do, the first action we take is against the railroads, and we create the Interstate Commerce Act. Okay, and what this does is it attempts to regulate railroads. We've talked in great detail about how the railroads abused the farmers and other industrialists who, by charging them extremely high rates to ship their goods. This is an attempt by the government. It doesn't really fully work, but to attempt to limit the amount that these railroad trusts can charge farmers and charge businesses to ship their goods. The next thing that we talk about, or that the government tried, was to pass the Sherman Antitrust Act. And what this does is it's going to limit the ability of companies to have trusts. And one of the first companies that they attacked was Standard Oil, that was headed by John Rockefeller. People thought of Rockefeller as a really, truly evil person who was trying to hurt people in order to make money. And he had a huge percentage of the market. 85, 90% of the oil market was owned by Rockefeller, and this was considered to be a trust or a monopoly. They kind of lumped the two in together. So what they did is they outlawed trusts and any other contracts that restrained free trade. So they broke up Rockefeller's trust, and he was forced to sell part of his company because he couldn't have control of everything. This creates competition, and with competition, we have lower prices, and it sounds like a good idea. It's totally anti-capitalism because of the fact that under capitalism, it's a free market, and you can do what you want, and if you achieve and hold most of the market, that's good for you, but this kind of limits that. It does create the idea of a free market and an idea of competition, which is good for the consumer because businesses have to do everything they can in order to limit the amount of limit the price so people will buy their products. So it's good and it's bad, but it actually is probably better because it did allow people to afford to uh, purchase these products, and it wasn't really taking everything away from them. The problem with the Sherman Antitrust Act is that it's so loosely worded that it fails to regulate monopolies and actually could be used to regulate labor unions, which we're going to talk about in the next lecture. That these labor unions would challenge monopolies, and when they went on strike, then they were actually restraining free trade. So lawyers were able to kind of make that work for them, and they were able to kind of limit the power of labor unions under the Sherman Antitrust Act, which is kind of backwards, but it worked for them, and it allowed these companies to put back strikers and make them go back to work. So the Sherman Antitrust Act, not very effective. There's another act coming up called the Clayton Antitrust Act, which is a little bit more effective in dealing with the trusts and monopolies of the time. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit of intro to labor unions here, and the next lecture will be more about labor unions. But this is we're going to talk about an event that you probably heard about last year, but it deals with the need for labor unions and kind of highlights everything that's wrong with the way that our society works. as far as working conditions go. So we're going to talk about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire. One of the most horrifying workplace acts of, not violence, but I would say workplace accidents that have ever happened. The Triangle Shirtwaist is located on the upper portion of a building. Underneath there was a bank, and up top was the factory for the Triangle Shirtwaist. And Triangle Shirtwaist, I'll show you in a picture in a second, but it's actually like women's clothing. So women would go to work, and it's what women would wear to work. And since more women were going to work, there's a huge demand for the Triangle Shirtwaist. There's actually a huge competition for the shirtwaist as well, and they were trying to cut corners every way to save as much money as possible. And sometimes the corners they cut caused damage like this to happen. All right, so you can see the fire department trying to put out the fire. They didn't have ladders that would reach the top stories, and when you don't have ladders that reach the top stories, you're not able to properly put out the fire. And you're also going to have incidences where people are trying to escape and they're unable to escape, so the only way to do that is to jump, and I'll show you a picture of that in a second. But you can see the destruction caused by this fire is quite horrific. Here's the people that had jumped out the building, falling to their deaths. These people are still looking for more people to make sure that they don't get landed on or something, I guess. This just highlights the problems that happen that were going on. So kind of a little bit about background about what went on. So I say it's a loft factory, meaning it's up top. They made shirtwaist and talked about their demand. They had 1,000 workers, and most of them were immigrants and non-English speaking women. Okay, so here's an example of the shirtwaist. A little bit out of style now. I don't think that you ladies would really want to wear this anymore, but it was all the fashion of the time. Okay. So as some of the pictures you guys have seen, like the child labor pictures we looked at, you see the conditions of the factory. There's fabric on the floor, machines run on gasoline, workers smoke. Okay, there's one rotting fire hose, one exit, a narrow hallway, one working elevator, 2 exit doors leading from the building, and one of them is always locked. And the reason for this is the company was nervous that people were stealing fabric or product, and they wanted to make sure that they could check everyone's bags as they were leaving. So they locked one door so that people can kind of sneak out the back door before they left. So it's kind of a little background of why they did that. Is just paranoia because the margins for profit were so small back then. Okay, so there's a fire, the gasoline on the floor, cigarettes, kind of a good mix for fire. The offices were closed because it was Saturday. The ones that were underneath the other business that was working through the same building. So firefighters arrive on the scene. Their ladders only reached in 6th and 7th floors. The water hose only reached the 6th and 7th floors. So they weren't capable of reaching the flames. There's nets and safety blankets for jumpers. The problem is they weren't efficient enough. They would break, so people jump and they would jump to their death. Okay, so 146 die. 19 bodies were found against the locked door. Bodies are so badly burned they can't be identified as male or female. 62 people actually jumped to their death. So it kind of shows the need for a fire escape or something, some manner of getting out of the building. This is going to kind of prove the fact that we need to fix the problems that we have in our society as far as working goes. Something has to change. This can't be the normal way that our world works, that our country works as far as people going to work. It should be a safe place to work. There should be alternate exits. It should be cleaner. It just is, as I said, is a highlight of what's wrong. Okay, tomorrow's lecture, the next lecture, will deal with the way that we try to combat this, that the people try to combat that, and that's with labor unions. So the next lecture will be about labor unions. I hope you enjoyed, and that's going to be it.